Hi, welcome to donallphin.com. This is a video taken in Clear Lake, California. We traveled 1,100 miles to get there. Got it there on a Thursday. My wife is sitting in the back of the boat behind me. And it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we just started pitching some boat docks with a Wacky-rigged Senko, 5-inch brown Senko, weightless. And within about 5 minutes of starting in the kind of the lake port area, that was the first hit that I got, and I threw it right back in, and the same fish picked it up. I'm assuming it was on a bed, but it was murky water. You got to realize that Clear Lake, kind of tells that it's really clear water all the time, but it's not. It varies in clarity, and this was kind of a murky day. In fact, Rodman Slough, one of the main sloughs in the lake, was pretty well murky the entire week that we were there. So about halfway in, this fish showed that it was a fairly decent sized fish, and so I took a little extra care with it. Pulled it in. It was a 4.3, 4-pound, 3-ounce fish. Nice largemouth. Took the Yamamoto
not a bad fish.
Senko hook, which is kind of like a circle hook almost. Weedless, and I'll tell you what, I could not get that hook out of that fish's mouth. It's just a beautiful hook set, beautiful hook up. Had to go back and get my pliers and take care of the fish so that we could get it back in the water. But for the first fish, that was an awesome experience for me, realizing that I've only been on Clear Lake 3 different times, and so it's roughly 3 weeks that I've been able to fish Clear Lake over the course of the last 5 years. And so really the only starting points and the only points that I really had as far as where I wanted to fish were areas that I'd fished previously. So I'd certainly fished those boat docks. That's a little island that's behind me, just out from a bunch of boat docks. But that was a nice fish, and it was a good start. The rest of the day, I just literally went to other areas. And so this next clip is, I threw a drop shot over to the corner of that wall, and instantly it was picked up. I was throwing a margarita mutilator, 6-inch robo worm, and I was on a 1/2-ounce drop shot weight. I actually used a medium to medium heavy drop shot rod because you never know when you're going to get an 8-pounder or a 6-pounder or whatever, and some of my drop shot rods are, although they're good, they weren't set up yet because it was just the first day or so of practice with the right line, the right pound test that I wanted to have. So I put on a heavy drop shot.
This is the first drop shot fish.
And that fish just really took it. But once again, I couldn't see the nest. I couldn't see the bed.
I knew that there was a bed
too murky,
right there.
But then when I got right over to the edge of the wall, I looked down and could actually see some brushed gravel.
So I'm going to go ahead and weigh him, but I
about
think
2.5 feet down. So I knew that was a bed, and the fish was showing the scars of spawning. Now this next clip is in a cut. There are several cuts on the south part of the north end of the lake that feed basically pump stations for the orchards and the pear orchards that are down there, and pump water from the lake for irrigation. And I found 4 or 5 fish on the same bed just at the mouth of this cut, and I was just throwing a little Ned Rig. Just a little bit later on in the pre-fish period, but I was just trying to gauge what the condition of the spawn was, because technically we thought that the spawn was basically over in the North Lake, and Clear Lake set up North Lake and South Lake, separated by a little narrows, and the South Lake was still on fire with the spawn, but supposedly the North Lake wasn't. But every once in a while, when the water would clear up, and I'd come into an area where I saw that the water had cleared, I would go back and take a look and try to find some beds. And there were waves of fish still coming in to bed. So I was throwing a Ned rig, just a little California craw Ned rig, and it took me about 5-6 minutes to figure out what they wanted to do, actually where their sweet spot was on the nest. And so that was a nice little 2.25, 2.5 pound fish that came off the bed. Now I approach the beds just straightforward. I try to stay back a little bit, try to see exactly where the bed is, try to find the sweet spot, put my bait out there, try to downsize until they just can't resist it and come take it. So once again, when I pre-fish, that's why I leave the camera. I always go back and weigh the fish and measure it, make sure exactly what it is, and so I can make my plan for later on in the tournament. So this particular cut, a lot of the people would gather around the outside of the cut and throw swim baits and other kinds of tackle targeting big fish. So I know that was a pretty good area. Well, I continued all the way to the back, and I threw weightless Senkos, I threw underspins, I threw a spinnerbait, I threw a topwater, and got nothing, and went almost a half mile back in there, and then turned around and came back out. And so this is where I'm coming back out. And it was a gnarly mess back in there. It looked like there were beaver dams and log jams and all sorts of things back there. And so I had to lift the trolling motor a bunch of times and work my way through. But about 3/4 of the way back out, I watched a bass, because it was clearer water back there, come up and take a damselfly off the surface. Didn't really crack the surface, but it just looked like it was just sipping it off the surface. And when I see a bass chasing damselflies and or dragonflies, that's the time I pull out a fluke. So I just dropped a rod and got my fluke rod out. And when I worked my way around through this little dam area that you're seeing, and I dropped that trolling motor, and it's like I say, about 4:30 in the afternoon, and when I picked up that fluke, the whole world changed. It was just one of those amazing things. They wouldn't come take the Senko. They wouldn't do anything to the underspin. And yet literally just moments after I passed through that dam, that log jam, there was a nice almost 3-pound largemouth that just really took that fluke. Now, in the next 3 or 4 minutes, I catch 3 more fish. You'll see one on film, but there are 2 others, a 3-pounder and a 4-pounder, that also took the fluke. And that really changed my whole attitude towards using the fluke. I knew I could catch fish on a Texas rig Senko. I knew I could catch fish on a Wacky-rigged Senko. I knew that every once in a while I could catch fish on perhaps a whopper plopper or some other kind of topwater lure, but I really didn't feel like I had a consistent bite as of yet. And so when I pulled into this cut and realized that these fish were all over that fluke, I was hoping that I could maintain that kind of an area or manage that kind of an area and just see how active those fish were and when they were active, because this was way after tournament time. This was 4:30, 4:45, and most of the time in these tournaments you're off the water by at the latest 3. So it didn't matter if the fish turned on at 4, because that wouldn't help us in the tournament. So once again, when you're throwing a fluke, you got to be particular. I had to make sure the fluke was absolutely up over the top of the eye of the hook, 4-aught EWG Gamakatsu hook, and I needed to make sure it looked, perfect so that it would work back to the boat well, and so that took me a little time. But as soon as I got it back in the water and made sure it looked good, it wasn't very long that another fish is going to hit right here, and that second fish really changed my whole pre-fishing strategy. So this was a very, very important part of my preparation, and at the end of the day, I took first place in the state in the state of Utah at the Clear Lake event, finished 12th overall, and punched my ticket to nationals. And so I owe a lot of that on the way that I pre-fished and being able to find some very consistent lures and presentations, colors that allowed me to catch fish all the time, not go through periods during the day that I was not catching fish. Most of the time, these fish were, I was catching fish at least every 20 to 30 minutes. And going into a tournament, that gives you confidence. It helps you. Now, this next clip is back in the Nice area, the northeast section, kind of by where that drop shot fish was taken a little bit earlier in the video. And I'm fishing a boat dock, probably 50, 60 yards off the shoreline. And I'm fishing with that weightless Senko. It's not Wacky-rigged this time, it's a Texas rig. And about 5 yards off of
that feels like
the
a
outer
fairly
post
decent fish
of that
on
boat
that
dock,
Senko.
this nice 2 3/4 pound
Not too much better.
largemouth just really grabbed that Senko, and that taught me quite a little bit about the shade bite. These fish were coming into the shade as soon as they could find a shady line, whether it be
caught in the,
out against a shady side of the grass line, or whether it's just in the shade of the post.
Very excited
on the boat
fish.
docks, these fish were there.
Took it. That was no question. Didn't have
that
to
was
worry
an
about it a
exciting
bit.
bite, and that was also an incredibly consistent bite. So the fluke
That's
bite
probably
and
2.5
now
pounds.
this Senko bite was just awesome. Now I wanted to find 3 or 4 or 5 different ways. I tried topwater. I tried frogs, and you're going to see this last clip that I'm going to show you is I only had 2 frog bites
now, with me throwing
the
frog,
entire week, even though I tried to throw it every day of pre-fish. And this particular one was a very aggressive frog up in the Rodman Slough area. Or excuse me, bass. And I was throwing the frog aggressively too. But
I'm I'm
telling you what, when you get on a frog bite in at Clear Lake, it's like you're thinking that this is going to just be the ticket.
Yeah, there we go.
And to be honest with you, I had 2 blow-ups. One was a huge 6.5, 7 pound fish, and this little fish was a 3, almost 4 pound bass, very aggressive. I hope you enjoyed this.
There we go.
These
There's
clips.
A frog
this
fish
was just
right
my practice
there.
period, trying to solidify what I was going to
I'm
use
not going to
for the
complain
tournament.
at that.
Please subscribe to the channel. There will be more about
nice
Clear Lake,
3-pound
more
fish.
fishing to come. Thanks for watching.